As you are probably aware, by now you should be, at the beginning and the end of the course, we're going to be doing group presentations. And one of the options is a group presentation of a book report. So a book report. So there are a number of books we have, and you'll, with your group, you will choose one of the books. I'd like to give us an example of a good and a bad presentation, because we've had both good and bad presentations in the past, and I hope that this semester we will have only good presentations. So let's look at, first of all, listen to an example of a poor presentation. Good afternoon, students. Our group's presentation is on the book about Abraham Lincoln, God's Leader for a Nation. It was written by David Collins. In the table of contents, I'm going to talk about the author. I'm going to give an outline of the book. I'm going to give a character introduction. I'm going to explain why we chose this book, and then we're going to experience our sharings. The author. David R. Collins was born in February 29, 1940. He was a published author and a narrator of children's books and young adult books. He published over 80 books and numerous articles in a variety of periodicals. He was awarded life membership in the Illinois Council Parent-Teacher Association in 1968. In 1975, he was named an outstanding educator by the Illinois Office of Education. I'm going to now talk about the book outline. Abraham Lincoln endured much suffering in his lifetime, but he was a true sower of faith and freedom. The life of Abraham Lincoln is well recorded for history through his own journals and the detailed research of countless historians. But sadly, the spiritual side of Abraham Lincoln has seldom been reported, partly because he had no formal church membership. This book explores the spiritual side of Abraham Lincoln, relying on his own words and the observations of his family, his friends, and historians. To add a more personal dimension, his story is told as a first-person account. Let's look at the background of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was born in February 12, 1809, the second child of Thomas Lincoln and Nancy Hanks Lincoln. Lincoln's paternal grandfather and namesake, Captain Abraham Lincoln, moved the family from Virginia to Jefferson County, Kentucky, and was killed in an Indian raid in 1776. Thomas Lincoln bought and leased farms in Kentucky before losing all but 200 acres of his land in court disputes over property titles. In 1816, the family moved to Indiana, where land surveys and file titles were more reliable. In 1831, Thomas and other family members prepared to move to a new homestead in Coles County, Illinois. Abraham struck out on his own. He made his home in New Salem, Illinois for 6 years. Lincoln and some friends took goods by flatboat to New Orleans, Louisiana, where he was first exposed to slavery. Education. Lincoln was primarily self-educated with intermediate form of schooling from traveling teachers of less than 12 months aggregate. He became an avid reader and retained a lifelong interest in learning that his reading included the King James Bible, Aesop's Fables, John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, Daniel Shiva's Jefferson Cura, Martian Clocks, Weems, The Life of Washington, and the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. 1832, Lincoln joined with a partner, Denton Offutt, in a purchase of a general store and credit in New Salem. Though the economy was booming, the business struggled, and Lincoln eventually sold his share. That March, he entered politics, advocating navigational improvement on the Sangamon River. He could draw crowds as a anyways, never mind that word. But he lacked the requisite formal education, powerful friends, and money, and lost the election. Early career. When he returned to his campaign and first speech, he observed a supporter in the crowd under attack, grabbed the assailant by his neck and seat of his trousers, and tossed him. Lincoln served as New Salem's postmaster and later as a county surveyor, but he continued his vociferous reading and he decided to become a lawyer. He taught himself the law. Blackstone's commentary, saying later of the effort, I studied with nobody. He championed construction of the Illinois and Michigan Canal and later was a canal commissioner. He voted to expand suffrage beyond white landowners to all white males, but adopted a free soil stance opposing both slavery and abolition. Don't ask me what free soil means. I have no idea. In 1837, he declared institution of slavery is founded on both injustice and bad policy, but the promulgation of abolition doctrines tend rather to increase rather than abate its evil. He echoed Henry Clay's support for the American Colonization Society, which advocated a program of abolition in conjunction with the settling freed slaves in Liberia. On foreign and military policies, Lincoln spoke against the Mexican-American War, where he imputed to President James K. Pollock's desire for military glory, that attractive rainbow that rises in shadows of blood. He supported the Wilmot Proviso, a failed protocol to ban slavery in any U.S. territory won from Mexico. Lincoln emphasized his opposition to Polk by drafting and introducing his spot resolutions. The war had begun with the Mexican slaughter of American soldiers in territory disputed by Mexico, and Polk insisted that Mexican soldiers had invaded our territory and shed the blood of our fellow citizens on our soil. He supported General Zachary Taylor for the Whig nomination in the 1848 election. Taylor won, and Lincoln hoped in vain to be appointed commissioner of the General Land Office. The administration offered to appoint him secretary or governor of Oregon, a territory as a consolation. This distant territory was a Democratic stronghold, and accepted the point would have disrupted his legal and political career in Illinois, so he declined and resumed his law practice. Did you get now? Okay, that was the presentation. Now, from this presentation, I ask you, did you get to know about Abraham Lincoln and his life? Did you learn anything about how the classics influenced him? Does this want you to make you want to read the book? I would say no, no, and no. That was one bad presentation. Here's another mistake. We had some groups introduce the wrong person. Thomas Edison, well, originally was one of the books before. He's the guy who invented the light bulb, not this guy's biography. Please, we want to get the right guy, please. Okay, that's a bad presentation. Now, let's look at an example of a good presentation. You can check these out online, and I'm hoping that these will help you to improve. This is an example of a good book presentation on Abraham Lincoln. Okay, and let's start to show it. Okay. Today we're going to present Abraham Lincoln, God's leader for a nation. Okay. The book title is right here at the very front. We can see what the book they're talking about. And the group members would be there. And we have a page number at the bottom to tell which page it is. In chapters 1 to 3 of the book, it talks about his early life. Well, Lincoln was born in a very poor family. They had very little money. They kept moving west because everyone at that time, most people lived in the east. Because they were poor, they moved west, got a little bit of land, moved again west, moved again, and again. So he, as a young man, his family was always moving. But from young, his mother taught him to value education. In fact, as a young boy, he memorized a lot of the Bible and was very devoted to God. So the Bible clearly is starting to influence his thinking as he memorized it. However, his mother died when he was 9 years old. At which point he started to wonder, why, God? Why? My mother was so devoted to God, why you die? He was left with only his sister, Sarah, cared about him and looked after him. But then she died, and Lincoln became very angry. Why does God allow good people to die, but all these evil people around me are still living happy lives? A good question, I think. As the second young lady in his life dies. Well, now as a young man, he met a beautiful young lady and had thoughts of marriage. But she died too. At this point, he stopped going to church. I can understand, 3 ladies important to him, all dead. That's his early life, growing up. So reference. The ideas are in point form, the key ideas. Okay. In chapter 4, it talks about a very important aspect of his life. He made a first trip to New Orleans. Okay, so he lived in northern United States and along the Mississippi River. So his job was to take goods from New Orleans City to New Orleans City from Illinois. So in Illinois, there were no slaves. How in New Orleans is in the very south of the United States where there are a lot of slaves. And so this is the first time Lincoln encountered or saw anything about slavery. He had never really knew about it before. He passed by a slave market. And as he passed by, he saw a young girl in chains. It means her hands and her feet were tied up with chains, being sold. Well, the person who was selling her said, "She will pick your cotton, work your fields, do everything you want her to do your every bidding." Lincoln felt very sick to himself. He thought, how can people who claim to be following God do this? Can't they read their own Bible? At this point, he made a resolution. He was going to end slavery. And so he started to work to gradually reduce slavery by entering politics. He decided that that would be one way he could do it, by entering the politics and try to change the laws. Now, chapters 5 to 13, we're going to jump through quite a bit now, talk about his marriage and politics. Well, he did finally meet another young lady. Well, maybe not that young anymore. He got married, and his wife convinced him to attend church again. So he started to go to church again with his wife. But when he entered politics, after getting married, he started being attacked by other politicians for not being religious enough. He felt very hurt by these accusations. And as a result, he came with this straight-eyed, strong idea: do not mix religion and politics. So he would never talk about religion or his beliefs. He kept them totally separate from politics after this experience. And as a politician, he slowly worked to try to gradually reduce slavery. He felt that other issues like religion and politics were the personal issue between you and God. Okay, moving on to chapter 14. As we all know, Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the United States. As soon as he was elected, the southern states rejected the results. They said, "We aren't going to have no slave-loving Abraham Lincoln as our president." At this point, he turned to the story of Jesus for comfort in his Bible, and started to reading and receive comfort from seeing how people rejected Jesus. He did his best to stop war from starting in USA, as he realized how painful war would be. He appealed to people's reason. It's not worth fighting about. He tried to reason. He tried to seek a compromise. He say, okay, in your states, you don't have to get rid of your slaves yet. We'll slowly phase out slavery over time. But despite his efforts for compromise, the southern states attacked the northern states, in other words, the state where Lincoln was president, and war started. Just after the war started, his son, Willie, died. Again, he turned to the Bible to get comfort during this difficulty. He felt the sorrow as many died. 200,000 people died in fighting from the north side. He had felt great sorrow over all of these deaths. But in the chapter 15, we see the war, and then finally the war ends. Finally, he had some joy. The war ended on April 9th, 1865. He had a time to laugh, a time to go to the theater with his wife and relax and enjoy it, something he had not done for years. But on April 14th, he was shot just 5 days after the war ended, and on April 15th, he was dead. That is the life of Abraham Lincoln, which is portrayed in this book.